But the first part of the thesis is this. The followers of Jesus did not understand his death as significant by itself. His death was significant because of his life. And I guess I just have to say, I think that one of the greatest mistakes of 2 millennia of Christian theology, if I may presume to pass judgment on the whole Christian tradition, why not? One of the great mistakes of Christian theology has been that we have thought for a long time that it's possible to derive meaning from Jesus' death by itself. Sometimes paired with the resurrection, so that the death and resurrection becomes a unit. This was what the old charismatic theologians talked about as the kerygma, the death and resurrection of Jesus. But let me just hypothetically, let's take a modern day visionary who was killed in the course of his life, in the course of his mission, if you will. Namely, let's say Martin Luther King Jr. What if we were to celebrate the King holiday by looking only at his death? Think what would that look like for them? What we watch films of the aftermath of his assassination at the Lorraine Hotel. Maybe we would do a reenactment of his assassination on the balcony there. Maybe there would be a PBS special on the gun that killed him, or perhaps scenes from his funeral or something like that. Focusing just on the death of King. Would that make any sense at all? Not a word about civil rights. Not a word about letter from the Birmingham jail. Not a word about the great I Have a Dream manifesto. Not a word about the Vietnam War. Not a word about all the things that surrounded King and all the things that he was dedicated to in his life. Would that be an appropriate celebration? Would that even capture anything of the meaning of King for modern American life? None at all, of course. And yet this is more or less what we've done with Jesus. This is more or less what we've done. We've shrunk the meaning of Jesus down to a single symbol, the cross, as if that requires no further comment. His death is supposed to be meaningful by itself. And I guess I've just come to the conclusion that that is rather ridiculous. And it has drained Christianity of much of its original meaning for the persons who began to promulgate this tradition. All right? So the second part of the thesis is this. Most early Christian attempts to interpret Jesus' death served primarily to call attention to his life. And you'll see this, I think, especially as we talk today. You'll see how early Christians really did take to heart the fact that Jesus was so out of step with his culture that he became a victim of his culture. And as people remembered his death and talked about his death, it was really, in large measure, to let sink in the fact that he was a victim of his culture and that they too were out of step with his culture. When we talk tomorrow about understanding Jesus' death as a martyrdom, this is what a martyrdom is. A martyrdom is the idea, the declaration, if you will, that a person who has been killed has died for the cause, died for the cause that they believed in. So you see, his death is interpreted as a way of calling attention to his life. And if I were to do this all over again sometime, I would probably not talk about Jesus the victim or Jesus the sacrifice, but just sort of put it all under the martyrdom umbrella. Because when you actually look at the early Christian tradition around Jesus' death as it grows up, I think it's pretty clear to everyone now that central in that, the central piece in that is martyrdom. That's the great theological motherlode for Christian theology around Jesus' death, the idea of Jesus as a martyr. And this is largely forgotten or ignored in our tradition today, and I'll talk a lot about that tomorrow. But there's no tradition, I think, that is more clearly structured in this way, that is, you talk about someone's death in order to call attention to their life and the things that they stood for. So these are my theses, and I'm going to be, they'll be in the background all the time today and all the time tomorrow and the next day. All right? So far, so good. Questions, comments?